So I'm going to start just by asking Rabbi Tatz to share with us. Today is the Jewish holiday called Lag BaOmer. I'm just going to ask Rabbi Tatz, this is a question that's coming from me, but I'm sure many of you on this call have a similar question. What is the significance and meaning? What kind of messages can we glean from the holiday of Lag BaOmer?
First of all, let me thank you for this opportunity to learn a little bit with some of your members. Not that you gave me a choice, but thanks anyway. Also, let me greet a few people that I see have joined us. It's Rabbi Zev Khan from Chicago. Amazing organization that he runs there. I wouldn't like to say whether Emet or Jet is on a higher level, but they're both pretty much up there. Rocket-powered organizations in America. And Daniel, my friend Daniel, nice to see you. Daniel, nice to have you with me. Brands in South Africa. Please forgive me if I don't greet you personally. I can't see everyone's name. But thank you to the JLE and to Olami as well for hosting this session. Please, I can see a chat box here, so if you need to, Eitan, nice to see you here, and I think I saw Eli Natan as well. So if you have a question, you want to add something in or make a comment or something, just go ahead and message it in the first instance, Rabbi Rittenberg, but I can see what's on the screen as well. With regard to Lag BaOmer, I'm going to take perhaps a little bit more than 5 minutes for this question, if you don't mind. Just a little bit more, maybe. And that is because it's a very mysterious day, Lag BaOmer, a very mysterious day. Very hard to find sources for it. We don't have a clear indication what it means. And that's very much in keeping. Rabbi Dan in Cleveland, nice to see you joining this group as well. So we've got some of the real black belts here. Zev, do you know Dan Olgen in Cleveland? Good, excellent. Okay. Lag BaOmer is a very mysterious occasion, deep in the Kabbalistic, a really celebration of Kabbalistic wisdom, which obviously more difficult to speak about. But maybe in a nutshell, I will just say this. First of all, you know that there are 32 days counting the Omer until the 33rd day, which is Lag BaOmer. And then there's 17 days left to get to Shavuot. This is known in the deeper sources as Lev Tov, a good heart. Lev is 32. You know in the Hebrew, you know that. Lev is 32. Tov is 17. A good heart. The first thing you notice about a good heart, again, stay with me carefully. This is not so simple. The first thing you notice about a good heart, Lev Tov, Daniel, I hope you're listening carefully. This is stuff you haven't heard before. Pay attention. Next time, if I'm not here, Rabbi Rittenberg, you can get Daniel here to give the class. He knows all this stuff. But here's something that he doesn't know. Lev Tov, Lev is something inward. The heart is inside. Tov, good, is always outside. Let me explain that. Lev is inside. The heart is your inner consciousness. In Torah, the Lev means the mind. In Torah literature, whenever you see the word Lev, meaning the heart, it means the mind. The mind is the inner aspect of your being. Rabbi Rittenberg, let me ask you to mute everyone if you don't mind, just because I'm getting some feedback. Unmute me. Okay, thank you. So let's pick it up like this. Lev, inside, Tov, outside. Why is good on the outside? Because good always involves giving something to somebody else. We can't call you good when you're isolated in yourself, right? You can't be called good. You can be called many things, but goodness always means giving, right? To be good, you need to manifest that goodness. That's what Tov means. You've only given me a few minutes, so I can't explain that fully. But that's the quality. Lev inside, Tov on the outside. The secret of the Omer is 32 days building the Lev that's inside and 17 days projecting it to the outside. The critical phase is the Lev. Once the heart is built correctly, once your heart is in the right place, as we say, then it's a simple problem, but a simple problem to demonstrate that, display it, manifest it in the outside world. Let me give you an example. When you love someone, there are two facets to the love. There's your inner awareness of the person, your feelings for them, the way you hold them in your heart, and then there's acts of love, which is a separate thing. You can have one without the other. You can have an inner grasp of love, and unfortunately no way to show it. The person is missing, absent, you cannot communicate with them. Many reasons why you cannot show your love. You can also have external acts of love without any internal feeling. We call that prostitution or business, okay, where there's an external relationship and nothing inside. A mature relationship, a correct relationship, a relationship of integrity requires both. So there's the lave inside, and then there's the goodness in which it manifests on the outside. The counting the Omer is a human being. We count from the days of Pesach, which are animal. Pesach is the birth of the Jewish people. The child is born like an animal. No adult sensitivity. Pesach, the offering is barley, which is animal food. We count 49 steps, Kabbalistically ascending the level of human, what's called the moichin, the brains, the mind, the spirit coming in. And on the 50th day, we reach not only the human, we reach the divine. So we move from the childish, animalistic, slave mentality, narrow human being. Mitzrayim means narrow straits. And we move through to the world of the fully human at the 49th, and then we make contact with God on the 50th. That's very clearly what we're doing. And that process of moving through the 7 times 7 levels of being human requires 2 stages. First, the inner work. There have to be integrity. You have to understand a thing deeply within yourself, grasp it, manifest it fully, and then there's a problem of how you'll explain it or put it across or show your love in the outside. Am I making sense so far? Those of you who can type me a quick chat message. Rabbi Oljan, am I making any sense here? If so, just type me a quick yes on the screen. Okay, so that is the process of the Omer. Now, the 32 build the essential human being. That essential level of a human being we call kavod. Don't think of telling me this is COVID. If you do, you're not welcome in this group. There's nothing to do with it. Kavod. Kavod means the inner dignity of the human being. Kavod. The word kavod equals 32. Kavod, 32. 10 sfirot and 22 letters that join them, right? That is what kavod is. The human is made up of 10 points, 3 in the head, 3 in the chest, 3 in the abdomen. Okay, that's 9. And then there's the 10th, which is the unity of all of them. Those are the 10 elements in the spiritual being. And there are 22 lines that, let me show you a picture. A picture's worth 1,000 words. I must have a picture here. Here's a picture of the Sfirot. This comes from an old book that I'm indebted to Rabbi Hirsch. Found me once an old printing of a Tosfos Yontov, quite amazing. He actually draws out the spheres for you. Here, I'll show you the original. Actually, he copied this and enlarged it from this ancient book. Here are the 10 spheres. Okay, picture of the 10 Sfirot. And you see 22 lines joining them. Yeah, somebody's taken the trouble to make a very clear modern print of this. Right? It's microscopic stuff, so this person has made a modern diagram. Can you all see that? 10 points, right? First is the crown, Keser, Chochma, Bina in the head, Chesed, Vur, Tiferes in the body. 10 points, and if you look carefully, now in this particular picture, the letters have not been filled in. But you'll see there are 22 lines. There are 3 horizontal lines only. You notice that? 3 horizontal lines. This one, and this one. This is the Aleph, this is the Mem, this is the Shin. Those are called the mother letters. And then you'll notice that there are 7 and 12. Diagonals and verticals. 7 of one, 12 of the other. That's the alphabet. The Hebrew alphabet consists of 3 mother letters. That's called Emesh, Aleph, Mem, and Shin. Daniel, are you paying attention? I know you know this, but you can always learn something. That's the 3 mother letters. Then you get the 7 doubled letters, right? In Hebrew, we call that Beged Kaporet, the letters in Hebrew that have a doubled version. Bet, Vet, they take a dot. And then 12 simple letters that have no 2 versions. That makes up the 22 letters. So again, 10 points, 22 connections. If you like to speak medical terminology, the 10 are the anatomy, that's the body. The 22 are the physiology, the workings, the interaction between the parts. That's what makes a human being. These 32 is kavod. The Sefer Yetzirah says the world was created with this. The Lamed Beis Nesivas Plias Chochma, the 32 pathways of wisdom that build the world. What are these 32? 22 letters joining 10 Sfirot. That is what makes up the human world and the spiritual world. That's called kavod. Why kavod? because your inner dignity, kavod means dignity. Dignity. Dignity means your inner being that is carefully revealed on the outside. Let's think about this for a moment. What is kavod? What is dignity? Kavod is not an inner quality, and it's not an outer quality. Kavod is a combination between the two. What is a person's dignity? Dignity requires revelation in the world. Again, if a person's incredible, amazing, accomplished, unbelievable human being, but completely blank screen, that's not called dignified. That's amazing achievement, but there's no revelation at all. And if a person is fully revealed, naked, totally revealed in the world, that's total vulgarity. What is kavod? Kavod is that there's an incredible inner depth, and only the right amount is revealed. Only the right amount. And every revelation requires a hiding. When a king wears royal garments, they cover the king, but they reveal his royalty. Now, it depends on your level. Adam and Eve needed no clothes. The body was enough of a revelation. The skin was enough of a covering. As we progress through history, we need more. By the way, I wrote a book about that. Here's a copy. I'm doing a little self-promotion here. My latest book, As Dawn Ends the Night. That's a book about the progressive levels of revelation. Daniel I hope you've read it. Yes, good. So that is the Rabbi Daniel O. I'm sure you've read it. That is a book detailing this sequence through history. So let's get it again. Kavod, inner being, 32 stages of the lave forming the heart, and then 17 stages of revealing it in the world. The first 32 are critical. 32 days forming the inner dignity of the human being. Why did the students of Rabbi Akiva die in these 32 days? They did not give enough kavod to each other. That's what these days are. These are the days of building the kavod. And they didn't manifest that adequately in these days in which that is required. That means at their incredible level, there was a failure of development of the human being. That is called kavod, right? Dignity. That is something this generation does not understand, by the way. This generation is totally invested in the Western world, certainly. Totally invested in externalities. The more naked, the better. The more vulgar, the better. The more that's revealed on the outside, the better. Who cares about inner content? Irrelevant. Irrelevant. The inner is much more important than outside. And then there's a careful revelation of exactly the right amount on the outside. That's what generates dignity. Okay? If you're into pop culture, there's a Jewish Nobel Prize winning songwriter. Wrote a book called Dignity. He wrote a song called Dignity, worth listening to. Dignity. Nice lyrics. You can download them and read them. There was in South Africa many years ago, there was a very strange songwriter who everyone in South Africa thought that he's killed himself on stage. You remember this, Ev? And finally was discovered after many years. And he also wrote a song about this, very nice lyrics, in which he shows that the external, he says, you think you're so fine the way you dress, but a monkey in silk is a monkey no less. Yeah, anyway. So that's the balance. 32. What does 32 mean? According to Kabbalah, the 5th day of the 5th week, that's Lag BaOmer, right? Think about that. 5th day of the 5th week. 4 weeks, 28 days, 5 more of the 5th week. 5th day. Why 5th? Very briefly, according to Kabbalah, the 5th point in the body, the right hand, chesed, the beginning of the process. The left hand, din, controlling the process. The third one, tiferes in the middle, balancing it. And how will this live in the world? How will this be revealed? Right? You go from first, second, third. The 4th is called netzach, that's the kidney, where the seed begins to be formed. And finally, the 5th one called hod, where the seed is complete. It's a seed. It's internal, hasn't been revealed yet. But once the seed is formed, the work has been done. Now it's only a question of detaching and growing and revealing what it is. The 5th day of the 5th week, Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, there's a very strange thing. We celebrate it because they stopped dying on this day. Right? We celebrate Lag BaOmer because the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying on this day. Excuse me, what's that to celebrate? You know why they stopped dying? Because they were all dead. Excuse me, what sort of celebration? You know why we celebrate? The plague ended, they stopped dying. Yeah, they stopped dying because all 24,000 were dead. What kind of thing is that? Right? Another reason we celebrate is because if Shimon Bar Yochai died this day. Died? This is a day of death of the greatest human beings, and we celebrate it? The answer is, when the inner world has been built, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai reveals the inner world of Kabbalah. When that's revealed in the world, the fire is lit, he can leave the world. Now it's just a question of revealing it externally. Now it's the 17 days that it takes to reveal Torah fully. Right? That is the meaning of Lag BaOmer. And therefore, It's a very hidden thing. It's the lighting of the fire. It's the lighting of the internal fire. Kabbalah is the internal fire of Torah. All right, Rabbi Rittenberg, there's a lot more to say about that, but that's introduction to Lag BaOmer, and therefore we celebrate the fire. We celebrate Truma. Of course, you know what's happened in this generation? They've externalized it completely. What is Lag BaOmer nowadays? Great external hilarity and you go and light the fires and have this incredible party about what? No idea. Just like all of our lives now, where all it is a manifestation on the outside. But I would suggest to your members, thank you very much. I have a hidden helper who just brought me a drink. I would suggest to you that what's needed here, the message takeaway from Lag BaOmer, is to develop some internal depth. And if you want to link this to COVID, that's what isolation is meant to teach you. Okay, next question.
Rabbi Tatz, thank you so much for that. Okay, we're going to switch now to the fast-paced Q&A.
Yeah, you want me to speak fast, right?
So the question is, why does the Torah not talk about reward in the world to come and only to mention reward in this world? You know, if we believe in the world to come, but why in the written Torah does it seem to focus primarily on this world?
Okay, and as soon as you want to cut me short, just go right ahead and tell me that I spoke too much, okay? Happy to do it. Stop as soon as you say. Who's the songwriter of the song Dignity? Well, whoever asked me that question, who is the Nobel Prize winning Jewish songwriter who won a Nobel Prize a year ago or 2 years ago? Okay, you asked me, why does the Torah... Okay, this is again, in 5 minutes, huh? Yeah. Okay, so the answer is that there are many, many answers to this question, but there are 7 classic answers. The great Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, who died in 1508, was expelled from Spain in 1492. He wrote an essay collecting 7 classic answers to your question. Why does the Torah not mention a world to come or a resurrection of the dead? And in this masterful essay, he collects 7 classic answers. The great Kli Yakar, who lived a long time after him, did a masterful work of summarizing all 7 answers, and you'll find that in the Kli Yakar in Chumash. If you look at Parshas B'chol Koisai, which we just read, right, chapter 26, if I'm not mistaken, check me, verse 12, could be. But in B'chol Koisai, the first few psukim of the Parsha, you'll see that he collects these 7 answers and summarizes them, each one just a few lines. It's a classic, and it's worth going through. I actually had the privilege of hearing a lecture on this by Moshe Shapiro in Prague, a few yards away from the grave of the Kli Yakar. And if anyone's very nice to me, I might send you that recording. You'll have to be very nice to me. But be that as it may. So I'll tell you a little about what he says. First of all, I'll tell you the question. And since you've only given me 5 minutes, I'll give you only one of the 7 answers. By the way, there are many, many other answers. There's an incredible shlo on this. And the Maharal has an answer on this. And the Gaon of Vilna has an answer on this. The Kabbalists have an answer. But I'll tell you at least the first of the 7 classic answers. First of all, what's the question? Pay attention because the question is subtle and beautiful. The question is, he says, that in the Parsha we just read, B'chol Koisai, the Torah talks about reward. It talks about reward. It says, if you do my mitzvahs and serve me, I will give you crops in their season, bounty, fruits, peaceful land, living in Israel, no wars, no weapons, no soldiers, a long list of incredible promises. And the problem is they're all material. They're all material, they're all physical, crops and living in Israel and no soldiers and peace in the land. Unbelievable stuff, but it's not another world. So Rashi deals with this, and the Kli Yakar says like this, what Rashi is dealing with is this. If the Torah did not mention reward at all, there would be one problem. But unfortunately, the problem is the Torah does mention reward. And when it mentions reward, it only mentions reward in this world. That's very problematic. That means anybody wanting to attack the Torah can say that the Torah is clearly admitting that there's no world to come. Let me say that again. If the Torah does not mention any reward, you can say the Torah hides the reward. We'll have to think of a reason. But the Torah does not hide the reward. The Torah tells you about the reward. And when it tells you about the reward, it spells out in great detail, it's a this worldly reward. That is clearly saying that there's no reward in another world. Is this clear? I hope the question is clear. That's a double problem, double trouble. So that's the famous question. It's like, let me make it easy. You go work for a company, you walk in, they give you a contract. You stand behind the boss's desk, you look at the contract, you run your eye down the contract. There's no clause dealing with salary. No salary clause. That's very weird. I mean, they tell you about the rules of the company and they have the sick leave days. No clause for salary, very weird. But you look carefully at the contract, you find there is a clause. You think, wow, maybe they're going to give me some unbelievable salary. And what is the reward? Well, you can go over to the water cooler whenever you like and you can have a drink. You can make a coffee occasionally. We'll give you a company car. You can drive it as much as that's really weird. I mean, the thing you're most interested in the contract is salary. So here's the Rambam's answer. The Rambam says, fantastic. This is the first answer the Kli Yakar gives. He says the Torah does not mention reward at all. Not at all. Where the Torah tells you that it will give you rain and crops and seasons and all that stuff, this is not reward at all. This is the expense account that the covenant gives you. That's all. Expenses. That's all. The company, there's a clause in the contract that says, you want to bring home deals for this company? We'll pay for you. Take your clients to the best hotels, buy them the best meals. You can spend whatever you want on your clients, provided you bring home deals worth more than we spent on your expense account. That's all. So when the Torah says like this, you'll get crops and rain and no wars. Why is Hashem telling you? If you do my mitzvahs, I'll give you the ability to do my mitzvahs. Why not? Serve me, I'll give you the possibility to serve me. That's all. It's not talking reward at all. That's only an expense account. And that's why it's in this world. What you need in this world to fulfill the mitzvahs, I'll give you. That's the answer. Now we have a second question. So where's the salary clause? If this is only the expense account, where's the salary clause? Not mentioned at all. Says the Rambam, you know why? Because Hashem wants you to serve him out of love and not out of business, a sense of business. This is not a business contract. This is a marriage contract. In a marriage contract, you've got lots of obligations to your wife. And believe me, when you stand under the chuppah, you promise her everything down to the shirt on your back. But you never stipulate payment for love. That you don't say. Right? You don't say to your wife, darling, every time you bring me a cup of coffee, $2. Make me a nice dinner, $10. Every time you're kind and sweet to me, $20. That is reducing marriage to prostitution or business. And that's not what marriage is. Does your wife know that if she's kind to you, you're sweet to her? Yes. Does she mind? No, that's love. When you're kind to your wife and you treat her correctly, is she nice to you in response? Yes. Is that payment? No, that's love. When a father says to his child, listen, if you behave correctly and you behave the way you want, it'll be very good for you and very sweet. Is the father paying the child for loving him? No, that's a love relationship. And therefore, says the Rambam, the Torah does not mention reward because you're supposed to serve the master for the sake of doing what's right, not for reward. The oral law hints very richly between the lines that it'll be good for you. Absolutely, the oral law is full of promise about the world to come. But the contract that you sign with Hashem, let me add, I've probably spoken for 5 minutes, but I'm going to add one more. For those who have a more sophisticated understanding. Rav Moshe Shapiro put it like this. If the Torah mentioned reward, not only would you be tempted to work for the reward, you'd be obliged to. Because every word of Torah obliges you. There's nothing in Torah that is just information. Every word in Torah, no matter how poetic and abstract, is there to teach you an obligation. And if the Torah had a clause stipulating reward, it would mean that Hashem would want you to focus on the reward. You'd have an obligation to, which is totally wrong. And therefore the Torah gives it in hints, but does not write it. Okay, that's the first answer of 7. Maybe next week someone reminds me we can go through others as well. Next question.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Tatz. The next question, another really simple topic that probably you could finish in 5 minutes, is the person is asking the question this way. They heard that a person can have more than one soulmate. And if that's true, what if they lost their soulmate?
Those are 2 unrelated questions, let me point out. Can you have more than one soulmate is one question. Can you lose a soulmate, one or many? It's a separate question.
I think they're asking both questions.
Yes, I know, but you're only going to give me 5 minutes. I know you. But anyway, it's like this. Why can you not have more than one soulmate? What's the problem? King Solomon married 1,000. On the contrary, why not? It's possible to have more than what you're calling a soulmate. I don't know what your questioner means by a soulmate, but a destined, set up, perfect soul that can live in harmony with you. Of course, there could be more than one. There's no reason why not. Could you lose it? Yes, of course. You can be dumb and stupid, and you can refuse to marry, or you can reject the person. You can meet them and refuse to marry them. You can marry them and divorce them. There's lots of stuff you can do wrong. We don't believe in destiny, that your future is mapped out and you cannot escape it. A soulmate means Hashem creates a person who, given the right circumstances and your right effort and decisions, you can make a perfect relationship. By the way, it does not mean it'll be a happy relationship. It just means the best person to bring out the best in you. And therefore, you could lose a soulmate, but it's irrelevant practically. In fact, the whole idea of a soulmate and a beshit is not mentioned in the Torah. And the reason it's not mentioned is because there's no practical, the girl doesn't come with a flashing light saying, I'm your beshit. So therefore there's no practical application. So the practical application is make sure you don't miss the person by doing what's right. What's doing what's right? Meet people under the right circumstances, look nice, smile, smell nice, wear a clean shirt, and when the girl appears who's got the right qualities, which means you're attracted to her and she's a good, kind person, marry her, and she'll be the right person. Very simple. Next question.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what is the best way for somebody coming from a married person, someone who is observant, to help their spouse who is not observant become more observant?
Okay, this is a very important question. The question was, you have a couple that's married. One party in the relationship is more concerned about their religious observance, other one is less. How do they induce their partner to become more religious? And the answer is you don't. All you show is love. Pressure, not going to help. In fact, we have many years of experience in this field, unfortunately, and it's a very common issue. It often happens after marriage. In other words, some years down the line, one party gets more interested, and almost never does pressure work. And therefore, the answer to the question is to be full integrity, not to be a fanatic, not to push in the other person's face your religious observance. Make sure that you pay attention to the love and the consideration in the marriage as a religious principle, just as much as all the other stuff. And if you want the person to develop along more religious lines, you have to make it a desirable path for them by seeing that it's made you an incredible person. You're a much better husband because you're religious. So you want the message to seep in through absorbing the correct values. Pressure, no. You say, darling, you're your own person. You have to grow at your own pace. I ask that you give me the respect of allowing me to grow at my pace. After all, that's only fair. I need to manifest my religious convictions. You make it possible for me. I will not push this in your face. We have to accommodate each other because that's what love is. If we cannot find the right level of accommodation, let's go to our local Orthodox rabbi who's a wise, mature person who knows how to handle these situations, who will tell the religious party to tone down and calm down and put no pressure on. And the other thing you can do is you can help the party to become more religiously sensitized, not through you. Hang out with more religious people who are admirable. Go for Shabbos to meals where they'll see people behaving in the way that they find amazing, right? When you see the world around them disintegrating and kids going off the path of normality and acting in bizarre fashion, and then they see in the religious world healthy, wholesome relationships, and you guide them into that. Let other people make suggestions to them. Let their friends take them to lectures and expose them. You tell them, I give you your space. You will grow at your own rate. I respect you. You respect me. Love and harmony, that's the way to do it.
Thank you, Rabbi Tatz. I presume there's a similar answer with children.
Okay. No, there's a few more things to say about that.
Okay, so maybe I'll address that also because somebody asked that question as well. How can a mom help her son who's 12 years old to pray? He doesn't seem interested in going to shul, to synagogue. I presume she means before Corona. How would you address that?
This is a common question, unfortunately. Today, almost every family has someone of the younger generation who's not so interested. And there are many reasons for this. But the general answer to this is no pressure either. You're going to get nowhere with pressure. No 12-year-old's going to start praying intensely with meaning because you pressurize him and try to force him. And by the way, prayer, as the focus of your question, is probably the most difficult. Prayer is something you can't force somebody into. It has to be a communication. Got to speak into Hashem. It's got to come from the heart. It's very, very difficult to imagine a 12-year-old naturally motivated for that. Why should they How should they have any understanding of that? Speaking to somebody they can't see at that level of maturity. And therefore, the general answer to your question, before we get to prayer, is love, understanding, drawing the child close, going at their own pace, making it desirable and admirable for them, understanding the tensions they're going through. Pressure is the last thing you want to do. Let me be clear, though, that as a parent, you need to put pressure on where you can. Again, you need to manifest all the rules that you can get away with. Here's the rule for parents whose children are not behaving appropriately, religiously or in a general sense. Some parents think, well, the child's not listening, so they give up everything. No, the parent must insist on every single detail you can get away with and turn a blind eye to what you cannot. Again, what the child's doing behind closed doors on Shabbat, you're not going to control anyway. No matter what you do, you're not going to be able to control that. Therefore, all you do is lose authority when you try. But what you can control, whatever it is, you tell the child, in this house, no shirt, no dinner. You want to come to dinner without a shirt? No dinner. Sorry, my house. By the way, when they ask you why, you don't give religious answers. You say, because it's my house. When you get married and you live in your own home, you can come to supper without your shirt and wearing smelly sandals and whatever you want, but not in this house. It's my house. Go to a Japanese house, you take your shoes off. You don't have to agree. That's what they do there. This is my house, Mr. 12-year-old. No shirt, no dinner, or whatever the rule is. In other words, the rationale is because it's my house. You don't give religious answers. You will not win a philosophical discussion with a 3-year-old these days, let alone a teenager. And therefore, you insist on what you can get away with, and parents have the authority, and children have to understand. There are a lot of things kids don't like to do that they have to do. But you don't put pressure on areas where you're not going to win. When it comes to prayer, you have to go at the child's pace. You have to make it attractive. They have to enjoy going to shul with their father and get something out of the experience and enjoy it. And pressure is not going to help. So you go at their pace. You help them grow gradually in a way that's loving, because you can't, you're not going to win pressure. I have a question on my screen. How do you handle a situation where children have to do things on Shabbos, where one parent is not religious as the other? Okay, so the parents have to get together and come to a working agreement. You can't have a tension like that between the kid doesn't know where there's no standard. Parents have to get together and make a working compromise so the child gets if the parents are interested in the welfare of the child, they need to get together and make an organized compromise so the child has a healthy model that they can follow, right? Not be caught between the tension between parents who are disagreeing on that's a recipe for disaster for the child. The first thing the child needs to see is parental harmony and love. More important than the details of what the kid is doing on Shabbos.
Okay, thank you very much, Rabbi Tatz. We have a different question now. What does the Torah say about cosmetic surgery? Is it permissible in Jewish law? In other words, the person continues, in other words, a nose job, but probably not limited to that, but they're using that as an example.
Okay, now I wrote a book about that. Let me show you the book. See, you need to buy this book. Daniel, do you have this book? Daniel, Well, don't tell me you're not a doctor. You can read the book anyway. Anyway, I'm sure Rabbi Khan has this book and Rabbi Olgen has this book. Other Rabbi Rittenberg, why are you asking me these questions? You've got 2 rabbis in this panel who know just as much as me. So next week you can, give me a break. I'll go to the Bahamas.
And one of them has an accent as well, so it's a good question.
That's right. That makes it, you can't beat that. Rabbi Daniel, you'll have to work on your accent. Cosmetic surgery. Okay, this is a very big subject. I have a major section in that book on it, but I'll just give you a 5-minute overview. The overview is this. First of all, you need to know that the surgery is being done for a good reason, not a frivolous reason, not just to follow the fashions. This part of the body has to be bigger this year or smaller this year. By the way, Rabbi Daniel in Cleveland, you know Dr. Green, a plastic surgeon there. Zev, do you know him? You know Rodney? Rodney Green, yes, South African, also got the right accent. He told me the commonest operation he's doing now is enlarging certain part of the body. Ladies want certain parts of the anatomy are now fashionable to have bigger. Right? In previous years, that was an embarrassment. Nowadays, the fashion is to make them bigger. So they risky surgery, okay, to have their bodies shaped in a new fashion. What will happen in 3 years' time when the fashion changes? Don't ask me, I don't know. That's not acceptable Jewishly. You're going through a risk for something that is simply a fashion. So assuming the surgery is there for the right reason. In other words, there's a real need. Person is embarrassed about the way they look. They have trouble getting married. or finding a job. They have trouble going among people. The Gemara says in one place, amazingly, that psychological pain is worse than physical pain if you could measure these things. Psychological pain, being embarrassed to can't face people because you've got a bad scar, person had cancer surgery or a terrible accident, or they've got some disfigurement which is problematic. That's real suffering. So if there's a good reason, plastic surgeons, before they undertake surgery, they always make sure there's a real reason for the surgery. My father was a doctor before me. He told me when he was a young doctor working in England, one day a young man came in to see him. He had ears like this. He asked my father, could he please have surgery to have his ears look pinned back so they look normal? My father asked him, why do you want the surgery? He said, I don't want to have children whose ears stick out like this. Well, that fellow just needed a little genetic counseling. He had a few misunderstandings. But once there's a good reason for the surgery, the person is suffering, then it is allowed in Judaism. So the question to cover is, very briefly, there are four main areas to deal with in a very small nutshell. The first one is, are you allowed to alter the natural features of the body? What does the Torah say about that? The answer is yes, you can. The second question is that you are injuring the body. There's a Torah prohibition of cutting or injuring or bruising the body. Torah prohibition, especially with a parent. That's another problem if the doctor happens to be the child. The child is the doctor or the dentist and they're operating on a parent. That's a separate issue. But you're not allowed to injure another human being. Every surgery is an injury, even if it's very minor. The third issue is the risk. There's risk in surgery. Is that allowed? The fourth injury is cross-dressing. Very interesting. Cross-dressing. If a man has cosmetic surgery, he's beautifying the body in a way that normally women do. The Torah does not allow a man to wear women's garments. What does that mean? Wearing a frilly petticoat and strolling down the main drag? If you'll excuse the expression. No, it's any beautifying feature that women do. If a man shaves under his arms, or he plucks out gray hairs, or he curls his eyelashes, or he wears makeup. Yeah, Daniel, it's weird. Have you seen the thing the ladies used to curl the eyelashes? It looks terrible. It comes out of a Turkish torture chamber. I mean, terrible. Anyway, that's what they do. But the point is that if a man does that kind of stuff, he's transgressing a man wearing a woman's garment. So, interesting question. If a man has cosmetic surgery for beautification, is he transgressing the problem of cross-dressing? And the final question is tattooing. Tattooing. Cosmetic surgery sometimes involves tattoos. The lip, for example, or the breast. In breast reconstruction, male or female, how do you get a normal lip-looking nipple areola complex? The old-fashioned way of doing it when I was a medical student was to graft skin. You would take skin from another part of the body that was darker, graft it onto the reconstructed breast, stitch it in, and then try to get a normal appearance. Very hard. You get scarring, very hard to match the sides. A few years ago, somebody had a brilliant idea. Just tattoo it in. No harm, no risk, perfect result. You can tattoo it perfectly. The Torah does not allow tattooing. Okay, so let's go through these briefly. Changing the natural, no problem. Injury, no problem. Rav Moshe Feinstein writes that the Rambam holds that injury is only prohibited in the Torah when it's malicious, intent to harm. Derech nitzayon, says the Rambam, or derech bizayon. So it's got to be an injury that's intent to harm. If the injury is not intended to harm, no problem. Third problem, risk. If the risk is acceptable and you are allowed to undertake risk for good reason. So you need your nose altered or a bad scar removed and there's risk to the surgery. The Gemara says if it's for an important reason like earning a living or getting married, you can undertake moderate risk. What is moderate risk? You have to read my book, but you're allowed to do that. Cross-dressing, no problem. If the man is having this feature, not for feminine beautification, but because he has a problem, he has a misshapen feature or a scar or some abnormality that means he cannot be employed or be married, that's not female beautification, that's fine. And finally, tattooing, that's an interesting question. See, the real question is, what is a tattoo? Is a tattoo any putting pigment of color in the skin? Or is it only a large picture of a grandmotherly type on a motorcycle with a dagger through her heart and the word mum? What exactly is a tattoo? The point about a tattoo is that it's permanent. That you cannot remove it. Very, very difficult to remove. I'll never forget when I was a young doctor myself. A young fellow walked in for some medical problem. He took off his shirt and jumped up on the couch to be examined. And I saw he had a tattoo on his arm. Sue, crossed out. Becky, crossed out. Margaret, crossed out. I think Becky featured twice. It's like a long string down. You'd think the guy would get the message, but you can't erase it, so you had to just keep adding. That's a tattoo. Anyway, there are early authorities in Judaism who say that the problem with the tattoo is not the color, it's that tattoos used to be a religious symbol. Tattoos in the old world were permanent branding showing that you belong to a certain sect or cult. So today it would be a crucifix or a symbol of a cult or a religion. That would be the problem. But color is not a Torah problem. There's a discussion about this. I once asked Rabbi Yashiv this question. I had a friend in South Africa who was a plastic surgeon operating on a religious Jewish woman. She was having a breast reconstruction and they wanted to use tattooing. So we asked Rabbi Yashiv and he allowed it. He said it'd be better for a non-Jewish assistant to do that part of the surgery, but that in fact was allowed. So in general, brief answer to your question, when there's good reason and the risk is acceptable, then a person, man or woman, can have cosmetic surgery. Next question.
Thank you. The next question is, we have a few very, very good questions coming through now. Will the Mashiach redeem a person who is not keeping the mitzvot?
Well, let's put it this way. Does everyone hear your questions? Will the Mashiach redeem someone who's not keeping the mitzvahs? Let's put it this way, Rabbi Rittenberg. When the Mashiach arrives, everyone will be keeping mitzvahs. No question about that. When you're faced with a nuclear energy and you're about to be fried, okay, you're going to quickly toe the line. So yes, he's going to redeem everybody. First of all, the Mashiach will only come when the majority are behaving the way they could. Or put it another way, the Gemara says that the Mashiach will only come when we do tshuva. When we do tshuva, the only question is, are we going to do tshuva because we want to, or is we going to be forced into it? But either way, we're going to do tshuva. Tshuva means everybody will be doing the mitzvahs. So the only question is how difficult it will be to get to that stage. So the answer is, if a person thinks, well, I can just do whatever I like and the Mashiach will redeem me, not going to work that way. You will be redeemed, right? By the way, there's another rock song written by the same. Anyway, the point is that you will be redeemed, but the point is what is the process to get there? So everybody agrees it will be through a process of tshuva. I'll leave you with a challenge that you can think about till next week. How will tshuva be valid if you're forced into it? That's an interesting question. Interesting question. If you do tshuva because you come to your senses and choose to manifest a love for Hashem, that's valid. How can you force someone to do tshuva? How sincere can that be? Hold a gun to his head and say, you do tshuva. How can that be? The Gemara asked this question. The Gemara says at Sinai, right, we're marching towards Sinai, another 17 days. At Sinai, Hashem held the mountain over our heads, and he said, if you don't accept this, you die. So the Gemara says, that's not a valid acceptance. That's a long discussion in the Talmud. If you threaten someone to accept Torah, do tshuva, it's not valid. And the whole discussion. So if the Mashiach comes and we're so terrified, right, the Gemara says, a king whose decrees as evil as Haman's, total genocide against the Jewish people, and that forces us to do tshuva, how can that be sincere? I'll leave that for you to think about till next week.
Okay, another question over here is, how do we make sense of contradictory mefarshim, commentaries? How can we truly believe in the validity of the Torah if we hear so many opinions?
Well, the answer to that is, let me give you a simple answer, and if there's time, I'll give you a deeper one. How can you trust something when there are different opinions? You know, in almost every professional field, there are different opinions. Doesn't mean you don't trust the field. You go to a doctor, he'll tell you, take a medicine. Go to a surgeon, he'll say, we'll operate. They both have evidence. They're both valid approaches. Why not? Arguments don't have to be that one side is valid and one side is invalid. We have a principle called elu va'elu. Both sides of a Torah, valid Torah opinions, both sides are valid. There are different ways to get to the same endpoint, right? There's more than one way to bake a cake. There's more than one way to build a building. There's more than one way to make a contract. There's more than one way to arrange, set up and structure a business deal. Why not? They can be legitimate. There can be many opinions. There can be different paths to the same end. And therefore, we have a principle in Torah that more than one opinion in Torah can be true. They can be different. They can violently disagree with each other about which is better, but they can both be correct. Torah is a transcendent reality in which there are multiple possible pathways to the same valid endpoint. The great Torah authorities don't argue about the principles. Not at all. No argument about principles. No one argues about the 13 articles of faith. Nobody. Some say you could say them more succinctly. No one argues about that. No one argues that the Jewish people have a special role. Nobody argues that God gave us the Torah. Nobody argues about the text of the Torah. There are arguments at legitimate level of difference of opinion. That's what makes us so dynamic. It's not one thing carved in stone with one authority and you have to follow that. It's a tremendously creative process. Next question.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, there's a long chapter in this book. This is a book everyone needs to buy, Rabbi Rittenberg. At least one copy each. There's a long chapter in that book on how two opposing opinions in Torah, even when they appear to be about facts, can both be true. Yes, next question.
So the next question is, why is God putting the world through Corona, and what do we need to focus on internally? So I know you addressed that last week from a certain perspective about silence. Is there a different perspective, or?
Yeah, I'll give you a different perspective. And that is, this is very important to understand. We don't know why God does things. Not that we don't happen to know, we cannot know. The reason we cannot know is we live in a post-prophetic era, as you'll see in that same book I just recommended. When prophets were around, you had access to knowing why things happened. Hashem spoke to us. When you got sick, you went to a prophet. You didn't go to a doctor. You might go to a doctor as well. But first you went to a prophet for the spiritual reason. If you lost your keys, you went to a prophet. When certain things happened in the world, you had access to reasons. Hashem revealed the reasons. When prophecy ended and the world went dark, we no longer have access to reasons. The Gemara itself says in Brachos, when a thing happens in your life and you don't know why, examine all the layers of your life. The Gemara doesn't say try to understand why this is happening to you in particular. Examine every area of your life. How you're dealing with your friends, how you're treating your spouse. If you find something, you fix it. If you don't find anything, says the Gemara, you put it down to your Torah learning. Why Torah learning, by the way? When I say you put it down to your Torah learning, you strengthen that. The reason you put it down to your Torah learning is because Torah holds everything. Simcha Wasserman used to say this. Beautiful. He used to say, when a doctor doesn't know what infection is causing the patient's disease, what do? You choose a broad spectrum antibiotic. An antibiotic that's likely to cover all the different types of infections. Torah is our broad spectrum antibiotic. Torah covers all the bases. If you find something specific in your life, you know you have a guilt about something, fix it. If you don't find anything, and I'm sure Rabbi Rittenberg, all your listeners are people like that. They went through their whole lives, found nothing they're doing wrong. But there's something, your Torah learning. Torah learning is the lifeline to the source. It's the broad spectrum antibiotic, and therefore you fix that. So the approach to COVID is, we don't look for a specific reason. We don't know. But we do know, and this is so important to understand, although we never know why things are happening in the world, almost never, we always know what. In other words, we don't know why COVID is happening, but we know what it's doing. We know what it's doing to relationships. We know what it's doing in isolation situations. We know who it's causing more suffering and less suffering, and that you're expected to read. So when you put in isolation, you ask yourself, what can I use this for? When you have to socially distance and take care of people who are particularly vulnerable, the exact nature of what's happening we can read. Again, when a person gets ill, for example, in a lot of pain, why is God doing this? I don't know. But what he's doing, I see. He's given me pain. Okay, you deal with that. He's given me mitzvahs I can no longer do. So you deal with that. And which ones I can do? Again, you're expected to reason, not why God's doing this. You have no access to that. But you're expected to understand what he's doing, not to be blind. And therefore, when he puts you through some experience, collectively or individually, you read the experience. So the response to COVID from this perspective is, what situation it's putting you in? You put it home with your wife, right? And normally you don't have much of a relationship with her because you're too busy. Now you're forced to talk to her for weeks on end. That'll do a lot for your relationship, okay? Or with your kids, whatever it is. You read the situation and you rise to the occasion and use, instead of complaining about it, you use the circumstances that he puts you in. Every situation. You have a spouse who's not giving you the right kind of relationship. Why did God put you in, assuming he put you in? Of course, you might have been dumb and made a mistake yourself. They got yourself to. But if Hashem puts you in a certain situation, or he gives you a partner in life who gets ill, or has emotional problems, or whatever the issue might be. Why? I don't know why. I need this. I don't know why. Now, what do? You read the situation and you rise to the occasion. So although we don't know why things are happening, we definitely know what, and we deal with the details of what is happening. Next question.
What would you say is the most important mitzvah in the Torah?
That's a nice question. What's the most important mitzvah in the Torah? That's nice. I'd like to take a survey of your members to see what they think. But I'll tell you this. I once had the experience as a teenager. I once went to a concert and I heard Arthur Rubinstein play. Well, one of the world's great pianists. Unbelievable genius, happened to be Jewish. Genius pianist. After the concert, somebody asked him, "What's your favorite piece?" And he said, "The one I'm playing." In other words, the musician has to become the music. The mitzvah that you're doing has to be total. It's not your favorite. It has to be the only one there is. Total absorption, total dedication. When you're speaking to someone in a conversation, they're all that exists. When you're speaking to a wife, how many people speak to their spouse and take the conversation completely for granted? How many men have a conversation with their wife and a minute later they can't remember what she said? How many men are sent to the store by their wife, by the time they get there, they can't remember one thing she asked them to get? You know why? Not paying attention. I have a friend in Chicago, wonderful, wonderful man. His name's Rabbi Kosh, Andy Kosh. Zev, you know Andy. So Andy said this, Rabbi Yoshua Kosh. He said one day, when he was about 19, they were talking to Rabbi Moshe Shapiro. He was their teacher, their rabbi. And he had the most phenomenal memory. He remembered absolutely everything, just an unbelievable, miraculous memory. So the boys stood around. You know, they were teenagers. They could ask him personal questions. They said, "Rabbi Shapiro, how do you remember everything? Like everything you remember perfectly." So he said the following thing. He turned to one of them. It happened to be a person called Manny Nissel. You know him, Zev? He turned to Manny Nissel and he said to him, "Give me your watch, please." So Manny took off his wristwatch and he gave it to the rabbi. The rabbi said to Manny, "How many times have you looked at this watch?" So Manny said, 10,000 times. He said, "Fine, tell me, does it have a second hand? Does it have Roman numerals?" He asked him 10 questions about his watch face and he got them all wrong. Got them all wrong. He said, "You know why? Because when you look at this watch, all you're looking at is the time. What you're interested in, you notice. What you're not interested in, you don't notice." That's the answer. If you're interested, you notice it and you remember it forever. If you're intensely interested, if you're totally bound up with it, you'll remember it forever. But if you're not interested, speak to your wife. Ask her about your dating. She'll remember every place you went and every item she wore on every date. Will you remember that? Not a clue. You see what you see and she sees, and therefore you have to focus totally. That's one answer to your question. But there's a more general answer as well. Some mitzvahs contain others, and they're more important in that sense. I'll give you a very specific answer. When a young person says, "Rabbi, which mitzvah should I do?" So if they're genuinely asking and they want to know what's most important, we usually say to people, there are 3 mitzvahs that build a Jewish home. 3 mitzvahs: Shabbat, Kashrut, and marital intimacy laws. Those are the 3 things that build a Jewish home. That's where you begin. Okay, secondly, beyond all that, there's Torah learning. It's a lifeline. It's a broad spectrum antibiotic that everybody has to do to the extent that you're capable. And then there's lots of stuff that becomes personal. You can study Lashon Hara and not speak in Lashon Hara. I don't care how religious you are. It's bad to say bad things about people. You can say Shema every morning and every night. It's a small thing. That becomes a personal pace that you have to set yourself. I'll leave you with one final thought. And that is, when people say, "Rabbi, which mitzvah should I start with?" In other words, which sins can I continue? That is not a legitimate question. Rav Ovadia Yosef, the great Sephardi authority, a bunch of Israeli girls went to him one day and they said, "Rabbi, which is better for us to wear, shorts or miniskirts?" The rabbi said, "I can't tell you which is better. I'll tell you which is worse." I don't know which he said was worse. One of them was worse. Because if the rabbi said shorts is better, the girls would say, "The rabbi said we can wear shorts." You have to have a little wisdom when you answer questions. Therefore, he didn't tell which is better, he told which is worse. So when the rabbi, because "Rabbi, I'm not keeping Shabbos and I'm eating unkosher food, which sins shall I continue?" The rabbi's not going to answer that question. If you ask him, "What's most important for me to start?" there's an answer. Some say kosher food is more important because it sensitizes you. Eating unkosher food damages your heart, desensitizes you. Others say Torah learning. You don't know your customer and begin with what is relevant to them. Anyway, let me thank you for this session. I've done my best to limit myself to the brief time you've given me. Some of the questions we didn't get through, you can note down for next week. if you still need me by next week.
Yes, Rabbi Tatz, we need you. If Mashiach hasn't come by next week, we definitely need you.
Okay. I just suggest to you that for this next 17 days is the work of revealing correctly in the world, right? We've had 32 days to build the content. The next 17 days are to manifest it carefully, correctly, those who are close to you, those that you're locked in with. That is the work that has to be done.
And very big thank you, Rabbi Tatz. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions and everyone who participated. And please feel free to continue to send in questions to rabbitatz@emetoutreach.org. Please continue to send in questions, and we will get to them in the coming weeks. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And good evening, Rabbi Tatz.
Pleasure. Good night.